The games industry has responded to the DCMS's damning loot box report. Gears 5 has had a release quite like any other. Fallout 76's new microtransaction has been spotted in an old trailer and in an old guide where it was a craftable in the game. Steam's big Discovery update has had a mixed impact. All of this and more in today's episode of The Roundup. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Roundup, our twice per week gaming news show. This weekend has been a busy one, so we've got a lot to tell you about. Before that, though, of course, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. It helps us out and lets YouTube know you're enjoying the content and is vital for how YouTube runs stuff these days. And if you also want to talk shop a little bit more about what's going on here, then check out our Discord server down below. Okay, let's get into it. Over the past few days, we've seen a number of responses to the report published by the UK Parliament's Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. Now, we published an in-depth look at the content and the recommendations of the report last week, but the most sweeping recommendations include the banning of loot box sales for children, formally classifying loot boxes as gambling for legislative purposes, and requiring loot boxes to be incorporated into the PEGI rating system. So overall, pretty darn major changes. Now, the first response to this came from EA, which is kind of amusing considering the amount of damage that they managed to do during their initial conversations with the DCMS. So, in a statement issued to GamesIndustry.biz, a spokesperson from EA stated, quote, "We have reviewed and are closely considering the findings of the DCMS committee report. While we don't agree with all the conclusions and recommendations in the report, we do take our responsibilities to players of all ages very seriously." The statement then, of course, went on to affirm that EA have an ongoing commitment to player safety and well-being whenever they are playing our games or engaging in their communities. They will continue to look at how they can contribute to productive research and solutions for the topics raised in this report, and they look forward to continuing their dialogue with the UK government. Now, that is a funny thing for them to say considering how much damage and, the lies they did in their first dialogue with the UK government, and really it doesn't fill me with that much faith. Let's move on. PEGI, who had been specifically named in the report, also released a statement confirming they are currently reviewing the various recommendations in the report and discussing the practical implementations of these recommendations. They then went on to recognize that there was currently a lot of debate around loot boxes, and they reaffirmed their commitment to working with the various relevant authorities to find appropriate solutions. We then have Taiga, a UK trade association representing the games industry. So they've weighed in. Their CEO, Dr. Richard Wilson, stated that he powerfully and strongly believed that more research needs to be carried out regarding both gaming disorders and the connection between loot boxes and gambling. And this, of course, falls in line with the assessment of the committee paper, which claims that actual effective research into the nuances of gaming disorder is, quote, scarce. While the various responding UK organisations were quite careful to not contradict the findings of the DCMS committee to any great degree, some stronger wording did come from their stateside counterparts. A representative from the Entertainment Software Association, the ESA, told GameIndustry.biz that the ESA takes seriously the issues raised in the UK Parliament's Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee report, but strongly disagree with its findings. The representative pointed to the recent moves such as Nintendo, Sony and Microsoft pledging to mandate loot box disclosure on their respective platforms by the end of 2020, as well as the robust parental controls as an illustration that the games industry does in fact have a commitment to healthy entertainment. Indeed, the spokesperson stated that the video games industry is a leader in partnering with parents and players to create enjoyable video game experiences. And while we're still awaiting responses from a number of different parties, such as Activision/King, while GameIndustry.biz confirmed that Epic Games, 2K Games, and Ubisoft all did decline comment. So clearly this DCMS paper, while not formally binding, definitely appears to have created quite the stir in the industry, but only time will tell as to whether serious change will actually be enacted. And while the ESA was really quite ridiculed for their statement, there is a little bit of truth in it. It is very true that the games industry does, broadly speaking, give parents quite a lot of control. There's loads of parental controls in your Xboxes, your PlayStations, your phones, maybe a little bit less on the PC. It's a bit harder to lock that system down, but certainly any responsible parent can prevent their child from going mad with the microtransactions. I think the problem is that a lot of parents quite simply just don't do that, and the companies are willing to, take the money should it come into them, and I think that really is a bit of a problem. Plus, there's also the case that as much as the industry may try to make itself safe to some runaway purchases through things like parental controls, ultimately, the psychological hooks that are underpinning those loot box systems and a lot of the microtransaction models, well, they sort of overpower any of those, any of those safeguards. And that seems to be why people don't really take, or at least I don't think people take those parental controls that seriously, even though, technically speaking, they do actually work. I think it far more broadly is just a resounding backlash to, I would say, extremely psychologically aware forms of salesmanship. And I think especially when that psychologically aware salesmanship is tightly married into the gameplay mechanics, it does get, well, quite disgusting when that happens. Next, though, Steam only just rolled out their new discovery feature, and it's already back in the news for some of the wrong reasons. As always with changes, there will be winners and losers. Last week, Valve upgraded their discovery functionality of the Steam store in order to make it easier for users to find new games to play based on their existing tastes and play history. This new algorithm was supposedly to decrease the dominance of already popular games in an attempt to increase overall variety. Now, the feature was secretly rolled out to a select number of users as a part of a successful trial period and then was fully turned on over the weekend. The full rollout of this saw a bunch of indie developers taking to Twitter, as they're like to do, to voice concerns over this new system, as it appears to have created some issues for smaller titles, and particularly those that have not yet released. The team behind atmospheric puzzle platformer Unbound Worlds Apart posted a graph detailing a steep drop-off in page traffic and wish list numbers, accompanied by the rather damning statement, "Thank you, Steam, for killing indie gaming." Similar patterns were reported by the creator of upcoming turn-based JRPG Bright Red Skies, Mark Viola, who confirmed that he noticed a huge drop as well, while Thomas Altenberger, the developer of the roguelite platformer Scourgebringer, posted figures showing that his title's daily wishlist figures dropped 66% to an all-time low. Altberger called the update a catastrophe and mourned months of effort ruined in an instant. And really, my heart does go out to them, because even if this is a temporary problem, this is a massive amount of uncertainty. And remember, if those games fail, a lot of those companies will go out of existence, and the Steam algorithm does have a massive, massive role to play in that. The effect on wishlists for the update, it really has been quite devastating, as wishlists are, for the purpose of Steam's algorithm, the most important signal. I've heard that from publishers. It's very much the belief that's been fostered by Steam themselves, who have often encouraged indie devs to prioritize wishlists and to set up a Steam page as quickly as is possible if they want their game to succeed. Then on top of that, the news that already released games are holding steady in wishlist numbers is doing nothing to make those developers with unreleased titles feel less aggravated and specifically targeted by this system. So what does Steam have to say about this? Well, in a statement given to Kotaku, Valve said that the discovery feature is likely to undergo further changes, but they declined to elaborate on whether those changes are related to the unreleased indie visibility issues that the developers raised over the weekend. Their statement reads, "We're monitoring the effects of the changes now that they're being deployed on a larger scale, and we're reviewing the mix of feedback from all sources. It's too early to say what changes will be made, but new features and tweaks are always likely after initial release." It is therefore something that Valve have confirmed that will be, updated in the future, but their lack of acknowledgement on the, profound effects that this iteration has is not going to reassure indie devs. Seemingly, the update has prioritized games that have already released that may be of interest to a user that they might want to play based on their history. One can see how this would drive more sales and a better user experience. It's not like the views have vanished off Steam, given what we know. It's merely that they seem to have been, pushed over to games that have already released over games that are unreleased. So will developers of unreleased games see their games benefit from this system at launch? It's really hard to tell, and that's a really scary experiment to run, given how much it costs to make games. More than anything, though, I think this shows the importance of building your community off-site. Now, it's easy for me to say. Our game dev studio, we're going to benefit from our channels, so it's far harder for a lot of the indies with less media reach who are stuck relying on an algorithm. So overall, I hope some clarity is reached, and yeah, it's sad to have livelihoods pretty much hang in the balance with an algorithm update, but I guess sadly that is a lot of modern media. Next up, we've got some less than stellar news from Discord, as the chat platform has announced that it will be closing the free game library for its premium subscription service, Nitro. The game aspect of this service, which actually only came in last year, gave subscribers the chance to play a library of games without having to pay. Overall, it seemed like a pretty good setup if you had Nitro anyway, but it's since become clear to the people at Discord that the vast majority of Nitro subscribers just didn't play those games. In a statement published on the official Discord blog, the company acknowledged this, quote, surprising change in services and pledged to refund Nitro subscriptions to anyone unhappy with the decision. While apologetic, the post does look to the future and highlights that the closing of the Nitro games library will free up resources which can be reinvested into new features within the subscription service. This has included decreasing the number of Nitro boosts needed to level up your server, something that will make it easier for our server to hit level 3, so yeah, if you haven't already, check out our Discord. And with that smooth plug out of the way, Discord have already clarified that while those games that were included in the Nitro subscription are being removed, users who have purchased their games through Discord will still have access to them. So overall, Discord will remain a strange, games storefront, but they're removing themselves from the game platform race, something where I think they pretty easily could be outspent by their competition, such as, say, Microsoft. And speaking of them, an official Xbox blog has informed us that Gears 5 has had the largest launch of any Xbox Game Studios game this generation. Aaron Greenberg, Xbox Games Marketing General Manager, writes that Gears 5's performance has easily doubled the first week debut of Gears 4 and made Gears 5 the most played Xbox Game Studios title in the first week since 2012's Halo 4. Moreover, the PC release of Gears 5 nearly tripled the performance of Gears 4, becoming the biggest ever launch for Xbox Game Pass for PC and Xbox Game Studios' best ever debut on Steam. One final piece of interesting numbers news, we also learned that Gears 5's launch weekend saw 3 million players take up their ridiculous chainsaw guns once more. Now, a particularly notable aspect of this story is the extent to just how Gears 5's release was divided across many different platforms and storefronts. It released physically on the Xbox Store, on the Microsoft Store, on Steam, and of course Xbox Game Pass for console and PC. This makes for an awful lot of sales across many different avenues, but it illustrates the efforts that Microsoft are putting into digital releases and variety in availability. While Greenberg's blog celebrated the fact that Gears 5's Steam release is the biggest in Xbox history, some commenters have been quick to point out that this is, it's not particularly huge in comparison to other games. Microsoft was never big on PC, oddly enough, and according to the sales figures, the physical version sold roughly a quarter as many units as Gears 4 did on launch, which was decently recent, but the reason I bring this up is because it really does reinforce how many people access this through Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate, which all falls into Microsoft's digital subscription service goals. So taking everything into account, the Gears 5's launch was bigger than Halo 5, making it the first time that Gears has outpaced Halo. That said, I think Halo 5's campaign may have contributed to that. Plus also the differences in availability. If we can contribute a large portion of this success, though, to the digital availability, such as Game Pass, I think a question really does arise. If Games Pass can generate enough traffic that Gears 5 can hit 3 million players in its opening weekend, what the hell are we going to have for the Halo Infinite launch? I mean, the Halo franchise, that's one that I think PC gamers have really desired a lot more than Gears, so that'll be interesting to watch. And then one final bit of news for our quickfire section is, of course, Fallout 76. As we reported last week, a lot of players are unhappy, myself included, because it really is scummy, the addition of 2 new items to the game's atomic shop, a fridge that stops your food or slows it from rotting, and a robot that goes around collecting junk for you. Now, Bethesda originally said that these atomic shop items would only be cosmetic, but, they now obviously have gameplay elements. But there's something new, though, about the junk pop, something that's really... it could be quite scummy because it's not even a new item. Some eagle-eyed commenters have noticed that the junk bot can be found as far back as June 2018 in the official Fallout 76 camp trailer, as well as in the 2018 Prima guide for the game, where it's listed as a craftable item. So, a craftable item that was cut from the base game, only to be sold to players later on through a cosmetic-only shop. Cheers, Bethesda. And with the news covered, let's round off some of the more interesting upcoming releases, especially if you're a fan of Nintendo, Studio Ghibli, or Geese. So the long-awaited remake of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening arrives on the Nintendo Switch this week. Originally released for the Game Boy in 1993, Link's Awakening is a reimagined world with a new art style, enemies, dungeons, and a typically Nintendo amount of secrets. I was also excited for its new chamber dungeon feature, but after reading a Kotaku article about its limitations, maybe a little bit less. But overall, though, it's probably a good experience if you like the Zelda games. Next though, we've got Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch Remastered. This remaster is releasing on PC and PS4 and brings with it enhanced visuals and performance and the just beautiful Studio Ghibli animation, while the original version of the game is going portable for the Nintendo Switch on the same day. And then rounding off this week, we've got the only game that can challenge the KFC dating sim for the Game of the Year, Untitled Goose Game. The honkly anticipated game from House has been a long time coming. Did have a bit of a run-in with the Epic Store, which, caused the thing to happen, though it does have quite a large online following. The self-proclaimed slapstick stealth sandbox promises all sorts of Goose-related shenanigans when it arrives on Epic and Nintendo Switch just in time for the weekend. And as much as it seems like it demos well and is charming, I am still highly suspicious as to what the overall game actually will be. But anyway, that is it for today's episode of The Roundup. If all goes to plan, we'll have another video up today, so be sure to check that out, and check out our Discord, hit that sub button, hit that like button, and with all those things done, I suppose you wander off, do something else fun. Thank you very much for watching this video, and with that, I'll see you next time.